you'll see that everyone bows and curtsies to the king when Camilla passes. And that was because they were angry with Camilla. All the people get the crown on her head were excluded from that coronation.
Behind palace walls where tradition reigns and loyalty is sacred, shockwaves ripple through the monarchy as King Charles III allegedly takes decisive action against Queen Camilla after a stunning accusation involving priceless royal jewels. Whispers of missing treasures once belonging to the late Queen Elizabeth II have ignited outrage, betrayal, and an unprecedented confrontation at the heart of the crown. Courtiers speak of tense exchanges and shattered trust. What truly happened inside the palace, and could this scandal change the monarchy forever? The discovery that changed everything. In the private wing assigned to Queen Camilla's family, a palace maid named Elellanar Hartridge made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the monarchy. She had served in those rooms for over a decade. She knew every drawer, every carpet fold, every quiet corner where nothing unusual should ever exist. It happened almost by accident. While tidying young Eliza's bedroom, Elellanar noticed something strange beneath a small wardrobe. A rabbit-shaped jewelry box had been placed toward the back, slightly out of alignment. When she lifted it, the base felt heavier than it should have. A subtle shift in the light revealed a hidden seam. Her hands trembled as she pressed against the lining. A false bottom lifted. Inside, wrapped carefully and deliberately concealed, lay the sapphire jubilee brooch. There was no mistaking it. The deep blue stone caught the light with unmistakable brilliance. This was the same brooch Queen Elizabeth II had worn during her historic 65th Jubilee celebration, a symbol of endurance, service, and continuity. It was not merely jewelry, it was a legacy. Elellanar did not speak. She did not panic. She wrapped the brooch carefully in silk and reported directly to the investigators. Within the hour, the royal jeweler had examined the piece under controlled lighting. The confirmation was immediate and devastating. It was authentic. It was the missing brooch. The implications were staggering. This was not discovered in a distant estate or hidden in a forgotten corridor. It had been found in the bedroom of Camilla's own granddaughter, inside the Queen Consort's private residential wing at Buckingham Palace. The location alone made denial nearly impossible. King Charles was informed at once. He did not summon a council. He did not consult advisors. He called for Camilla directly. 20 minutes later, she entered his private study. The air inside the room felt heavy, as if the walls themselves understood what was unfolding. On the desk between them, illuminated beneath a single lamp, lay the sapphire brooch. Camilla's eyes fell on it instantly. For a brief second, something flickered across her face. Surprise, calculation, perhaps both. Charles did not raise his voice. He did not accuse her outright. Instead, he asked one controlled, deliberate question about how such an item could possibly end up in that room. The silence that followed felt endless. This was no misplaced heirloom, no administrative oversight. The brooch had not simply wandered, it had been hidden, carefully, beneath a false bottom in a child's jewelry box. That required planning. It required access. It required intent. As Charles looked at the woman beside whom he had stood for decades, the weight of realization settled over him. This was not confusion. It was not a misunderstanding. It was calculated. And what did Charles see beside him? Devotion or a calculated truth hiding in plain sight for decades? Keep watching. The call that came from within. The discovery of the sapphire jubilee brooch on Sunday, May 14, 2025, did not happen in isolation. It was the final piece of a chain of events that had begun 10 days earlier, on the quiet morning of Wednesday, May 4, 2025. That was the day Donald Walton, the royal treasurer who had overseen the vaults since September 2022, walked into Buckingham Palace carrying a leather folder that would alter everything. His quarterly audit had uncovered something unthinkable. Several of Queen Elizabeth II's most sacred private possessions were missing from the secured treasury. Among them was the sapphire jubilee brooch. Also gone was the double-strand pearl necklace the late Queen had worn during Princess Diana's funeral in 1997, a piece heavy with history and grief. But even more alarming were two handwritten journals bound in worn leather. These were not ceremonial records. They were deeply personal reflections written during the darkest months of the global lockdown, containing private letters addressed to her heirs. Under the statutes of the Royal Collection Trust, Such items were to remain sealed for 99 to 100 years. They were never meant to be touched. King Charles ordered a private investigation immediately. Sir Clement Mallister, a veteran of royal intelligence, was given full authority to operate in silence. No public inquiry, no press involvement, absolute discretion. The first breakthrough came during the review of security logs from April 27th. A guard named Robert Halton had clocked into the Treasury area at 3:49 a.m., nearly 2 hours before his scheduled shift. There was no clear explanation for his early presence, and more troubling still, there was no closing report documenting his activity. Halton was brought in for questioning. At first, he insisted nothing unusual had occurred, but under sustained pressure, his composure fractured. He admitted he had entered the restricted vault area after receiving instructions through an internal palace line. The caller had known his name, his shift schedule, even personal details about his family. They had implied authority from upstairs and offered financial assistance that would cover his wife's cancer treatment. Halton claimed he believed he was following legitimate orders from within the royal household. He insisted he never physically stole anything himself. He had only allowed access. Sir Clement traced the internal call. The origin was not external. It did not come from a foreign entity or a burner device. It was traced directly to the private residential wing of Buckingham Palace. The wing occupied by Queen Camilla. There were no broken locks, no triggered alarms. The vault's reinforced steel doors had only opened because someone with clearance made it possible. The breach had been clean, precise, almost surgical. When Clement presented these findings to King Charles, the room fell into a silence more devastating than any accusation. This was not a random security failure. It was not a careless mistake. The theft of the brooch, the pearls, and the Queen's most guarded journals had not been orchestrated from outside the gates. It had originated from within the palace walls. And now, with the sapphire brooch already found hidden in that same wing, the pattern was no longer theoretical. It was personal. So now, with the sapphire brooch uncovered, was this discovery coincidence or the prelude to unimaginable judgment? Stay glued. The judgment no one thought possible. By late afternoon, the evidence could no longer be contained in whispers. At exactly 4 p.m., the heavy oak doors of the palace war room were closed from the inside. Present were King Charles, Prince William, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Queen Camilla. No aides, no secretaries, no leaks. The air felt tight, charged with something irreversible. Only hours earlier, Sir Clement Mallister had confirmed that the internal call which persuaded Robert Halton to access the vault on April 27th originated from the private residential wing of Buckingham Palace, Camilla's wing. Now, with the sapphire Jubilee brooch already recovered from young Eliza's room on May 14th, the investigation had moved from suspicion to confrontation. King Charles began without theatrics. His voice was calm, almost too calm. He outlined the missing items once more. The sapphire brooch worn by Queen Elizabeth II during her 65th Jubilee, the double-strand pearl necklace she wore to Princess Diana's funeral in 1997, and the 2 handwritten lockdown journals protected under the Royal Collection Trust's 99 to 100-year seal. Then he revealed the trace of the internal call and the location where the brooch had been discovered. Camilla did not appear shaken. She listened, hands folded neatly, posture straight. When she finally spoke, her tone was steady. She rejected the word theft. She insisted the brooch had been verbally promised to her years earlier. According to her, Queen Elizabeth had expressed in private conversation that the sapphire would one day be hers. It was not greed, she suggested, but a matter of understanding what had already been offered. The room remained still. Then came the journals. Camilla acknowledged their removal, but framed it differently. She claimed she feared the content could damage the stability of the reign. The late Queen's reflections during the global lockdown, she implied, contained doubts and concerns about the future. By retrieving them, she believed she was safeguarding the crown, protecting Charles from potential unrest decades later. Prince William's jaw tightened. Princess Anne's expression hardened. This was not a misunderstanding over inheritance. This was deliberate action taken outside protocol. Charles stood slowly. The weight of years seemed visible in his face. He reminded the room of the law governing the late monarch's possessions. Nothing was to be touched for nearly a century. Not jewelry, not papers, not private thoughts, personal assurances, he said quietly. are never executed through midnight calls and manipulated guards. The silence that followed felt like a final threshold. Without raising his voice, King Charles delivered the ruling. Effective immediately, Queen Camilla would be stripped of her ceremonial duties and military titles. Her public engagements would be suspended indefinitely. She would have no future claim over royal property, nor would her family. The monarchy, he declared, is sustained by service and trust. If that trust is broken within its own walls, the crown itself is weakened. No one interrupted him. The decision was both sovereign and personal. He had chosen the integrity of the institution over the protection of his marriage. In that room, history shifted. A reigning queen consort was being removed from public life not by scandal in the press, but by judgment within the palace. Outside, London moved on, unaware that one of the most dramatic decisions in modern royal history had just been made. But inside Buckingham Palace, the balance between loyalty and law had been permanently redrawn, and the consequences were only beginning to unfold. Now, what changed inside Buckingham Palace, and which forbidden pages rewrote loyalty into law forever? The pages she was never meant to touch. After the ruling in the war room, the focus shifted from the glitter of jewels to something far more powerful: the two leather-bound journals written by Queen Elizabeth II during the long, uncertain months of the global lockdown. If the sapphire brooch symbolized tradition, the journals represented something deeper: memory, doubt, and private truth. These were not ceremonial diaries meant for future exhibitions. They were handwritten reflections composed during a period when the monarchy, like the rest of the world, faced isolation and uncertainty. Within those pages were personal letters addressed to her heirs, thoughts about duty, loss, and the fragile balance of the crown in a changing era. Under the statutes of the Royal Collection Trust, such materials were sealed for 99 to 100 years. The expected opening would not occur until well into the next century. They were meant for a generation not yet born. Yet, on April 27th, access to the vault had been granted. The journals had been removed alongside the brooch and the pearl necklace. That detail weighed heavily on King Charles after his decision regarding Camilla. Jewelry could be rationalized as inheritance in dispute, but private writings? That required motive beyond sentiment. Camilla's explanation during the confrontation had been clear. She claimed she feared what the journals contained. She implied that Queen Elizabeth, in her final months, had expressed concerns about the future of the monarchy. Concerns that could be misunderstood if read without context decades from now. According to Camilla, retrieving them was an act of protection. She insisted she acted not out of ambition, but out of loyalty to her husband's reign. But protocol left no room for private interpretation. The sealing period existed precisely to prevent emotional reactions from interfering with constitutional stability. No individual, not even a queen consort, had the authority to decide which parts of a monarch's legacy were safe to revisit. Sir Clement Mallister personally oversaw the recovery and verification of the journals after the investigation closed in. Once confirmed authentic, they were returned to the vault under heightened security. The reinforced steel doors were sealed again, and new digital access codes were implemented, known only to King Charles and his heir, Prince William. Still, whispers spread quietly within palace corridors. Some speculated that the journals contained reflections about succession pressures during lockdown. Others believed they addressed internal family tensions or the evolving role of the monarchy in a modern world. None of these theories were confirmed. The contents remained unseen, unread, and officially untouched. What made the situation more unsettling was not what was known, but what was unknown. If Camilla truly believed the writings posed a risk, what had she seen? Had she read even a single page before they were retrieved? Or had she acted purely on assumption? For King Charles, the question was less about speculation and more about principle. The late Queen's words were part of her sovereign legacy. They were not open to interpretation, not subject to editing, and certainly not to be removed in secrecy. The journals were back in their place, silent, sealed, and waiting for a century to pass. But the act of disturbing them had already altered the present, and the shadow of what might be written inside them continued to linger over Buckingham Palace. And as the sealed journals returned to silence, what truth now haunts Buckingham Palace before dawn quietly breaks? Stay tuned. The quiet departure before dawn. Ruling moved swiftly from private chambers to public reality. The morning of Monday, May 15, 2025, arrived under a heavy sky over London. Outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, tourists gathered as usual, unaware that inside, one of the most dramatic shifts in modern royal history was unfolding. Was moved from Buckingham Palace to Ray was moved from Buckingham Palace to Ray Mill House, her private residence in Wiltshire. The transfer was handled with discretion. A small security detail accompanied her, not as spectacle, but as procedure. There was no public statement at the gates, no visible farewell. Inside palace offices, changes began immediately. Her name was removed from the royal circular listing upcoming engagements. Autumn appearances that had already been drafted were quietly withdrawn. Within 72 hours, charities and patronages connected to her office received formal letters informing them that their royal association would be reviewed and, in many cases, suspended. The language was measured and restrained, but the message was unmistakable. The previous evening, at exactly 9 p.m., King Charles had addressed the nation in a pre-recorded broadcast from his study. Seated behind his mahogany desk, with the royal crest displayed behind him, he spoke in a tone that balanced fatigue and resolve. He confirmed that the missing items belonging to Queen Elizabeth II had been recovered. He acknowledged that a member of his household had faced consequences under royal code. He did not speak Camilla's name. He did not need to. Across the United Kingdom, the reaction was immediate. News networks carried urgent headlines. Commentators debated whether the decision represented necessary accountability or a personal tragedy unfolding in public view. Social media surged with shock, disbelief, and fierce opinion. Many had only recently grown accustomed to the image of Camilla as queen consort. Now, in a matter of hours, that role had been stripped of visibility. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere felt altered. Staff moved carefully, aware that history had pivoted in real time. Prince William remained close to his father during these days, offering support as the monarchy absorbed the weight of the scandal. Princess Anne, ever steady, maintained composure in public, reinforcing the image of institutional continuity. At Ray Mill House in Wiltshire, Camilla retreated from official life. The residence, once a place of personal retreat, now became a symbol of distance. There were no announcements of duration, no timeline for return. The removal was described internally as indefinite. For King Charles, the execution of the decision did not bring relief. It brought finality. He had chosen the preservation of the crown's credibility over personal loyalty. The sapphire brooch had been returned. The journals were sealed once more. The vault doors stood closed. Yet the echo of what had happened between May 4th and May 15th, 2025, lingered in every corridor of the palace, a reminder that even within royal walls, trust can fracture in silence. So how did a simple sapphire brooch and sealed journals come to fracture trust within the palace, leaving even kings powerless? Stay with us. A kingdom's quiet burden. The quiet of Queen Elizabeth's private chapel on that late afternoon of May 15th, 2025, was almost tangible. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, casting muted colors across the polished stone floor, and the air smelled faintly of aged wood and candle wax. King Charles stood alone, save for the steady presence of his eldest son, Prince William, whose hand rested lightly on his father's shoulder. There were no cameras, no reporters, just the weight of history pressing in on both men, a reminder of the choices made and the sacrifices demanded by a crown. In the adjoining chamber, Sir Clement Mallister moved with careful precision, sealing the vault once more. The journals, the sapphire brooch, and other items of profound significance were locked away under layers of security that had been reinforced after the recent scandal. Digital locks clicked into place, and the new codes were recorded in the minds of only two people, King Charles and his heir. The sound of the locks closing seemed to echo in the silent chapel, each click a marker of finality, a quiet acknowledgement that some chapters of the past were now beyond reach. Charles allowed himself a moment to breathe, the depth of the day's events pressing heavily against him. Every decision since May 4th had led to this point. The confrontation over the journals, the accusations against Camilla, the the removal of her name from the royal circular, and her quiet departure to Ray Mill House. All of it had been for the sake of the monarchy, for the preservation of a legacy stretching back centuries. Yet, even as duty was upheld, personal cost weighed deep. There was an ache in knowing that loyalty had been tested, and that the preservation of the crown had required the fracturing of trust within the walls he had called home for decades. Prince William remained close, a quiet anchor amid the storm of public scrutiny. His presence was more than symbolic. It was a reminder that continuity mattered as much as justice. The young prince's eyes, steady and attentive, reflected both concern and comprehension, as if silently acknowledging the burden now resting entirely on his father's shoulders. Words felt unnecessary here. The silence between them was charged with shared understanding, a testament to the unspoken bond forged through duty, love, and shared responsibility. Outside the palace, the nation continued to grapple with the unfolding drama. Letters poured in from across the United Kingdom, messages of support, admiration, and relief filling the palace's inboxes and mailrooms. Citizens expressed gratitude for accountability, for a clear demonstration that the crown was not above its own rules. Even in the shadow of scandal, the public response was unexpectedly positive, a reminder that leadership could inspire respect even when the path chosen was difficult and unforgiving. Inside, however, there was no celebration. Each step through the palace corridors felt heavier than the last. Every glance at the portraits of past monarchs, a subtle reminder of the weight borne by those who held the crown. Charles reflected on the sacrifices demanded by his position, the delicate balance between personal loyalty and institutional duty, the endless scrutiny, and the knowledge that every decision would ripple far beyond the palace walls. As evening approached, the chapel's shadows lengthened, the colors of the stained glass deepening into rich, somber hues. The king remained for a long while, alone in contemplation, until William finally stepped back, giving his father space to absorb the solemnity of the moment. The vault was secure, the codes known only to those it mattered most, and the public had seen that accountability had been enforced. Yet, the emotional toll lingered, heavy and unyielding, a quiet reminder that even the highest office could never shield its holder from the cost of choosing the crown. And now, as twilight cloaks the chapel, who truly bears the weight behind the crown, and what secrets linger in its shadows? Shadows behind the seal. The palace corridors were quiet in the days following Camilla's exile, but the weight of what had transpired did not fade. The journals, carefully documented reflections, private letters, and insights from Queen Elizabeth II's long reign had been returned to the vault. Now they were sealed with unprecedented security measures, protected under a strict 99 to 100-year lock that would prevent their opening until the year 2122. Only King Charles and his heir held the knowledge of the codes, and even they understood the magnitude of the responsibility entrusted to them. These were not merely papers or jewels, they were fragments of history, each page a delicate thread in the tapestry of the monarchy, now removed from immediate view but never from consequence. Every precaution was taken to ensure that the journals could not be disturbed, accessed, or replicated. Sir Clement Mallister, who had overseen the latest sealing, moved with exacting care, verifying that every digital lock and physical barrier was fully operational. The process was meticulous, a ritual that underscored both the sensitivity of the contents and the deep stakes involved. Even within the royal household, few were privy to the exact nature of what had been hidden, leaving the corridors alive with whispers and speculation. The secrecy was suffocating yet necessary, a shield meant to protect the monarchy and, perhaps, to shield the crown from truths too fragile to confront. As the days and weeks passed, the unanswered questions loomed larger than ever. Why had Camilla removed the journals? Was it an act of self-preservation, a desperate measure to protect her own position and reputation? Or was there a more profound motive at play, an effort to suppress knowledge that might have altered the course of history? Even with the immediate crisis contained, the uncertainty remained, a shadow hovering over the royal family and the palace itself. Each document represented decisions, doubts, and reflections that had shaped an era, and now, those voices were silenced behind reinforced doors and secure vaults. The public response to the sealing was muted, the story of the journals largely overshadowed by the immediate scandal of Camilla's exile and the swift accountability demonstrated by Charles. But within the palace, the implications were heavy. Every glance at the vault reminded those who knew of its contents that some truths are not meant for the present, that the weight of history can only be carried forward cautiously, measured against both time and legacy. The journals were a promise of revelation, a secret suspended across decades, their eventual unveiling set for a future generation entirely unconnected to the drama of 2025. Even now, it was impossible to ignore the sense that what had been revealed in May was only the beginning. The theft, the confrontation, the exile, they had all been symptoms of a deeper, internal struggle that touched not just the individuals involved, but the very foundation of the monarchy itself. The sealed journals were a symbol of restraint and preservation, an acknowledgement that some truths, no matter how compelling or consequential, must wait. As the days turned into weeks, the palace returned to its outward rhythms, ceremonies continued, and the nation's attention shifted elsewhere. Yet in the silent chambers where history was kept, the journals remained locked, their secrets intact, a testament to the enduring tension between transparency, loyalty, and the heavy burden of the crown. Questions lingered, unresolved, and the shadow of what Camilla had done, and why, would echo quietly for generations to come. So, what do you think? Was King Charles defending the crown or acting with ruthless precision? And did Camilla truly steal the jewels or protect a deeper secret? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.